into the Pacific Northwest, and also some unsettling weather throughout the East Coast and even parts of Florida. Now, moving in 24 hours from now, which will be tomorrow afternoon, there will be an upper level low, a trough just over Lake Ontario. Connecting down to Florida, there's going to be a ridge over the Four Corners part of the country, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico. And there's going to be a weak trough just south of Southern California. What does this mean? It means that there's going to be maybe a chance of wet weather in the Colorado Valley, and plenty of snow to go around for folks along the East Coast, along the I-95 corridor, in the form of wintry weather. But down south, it'll be warmer. Yet Florida might still get some wet weather too. More unsettled weather in the Pacific Northwest, which will lead to a buildup of rain and snow over there, depending on the location. Monday afternoon, a trough will be over Arizona, a ridge over Salt Lake City, and it looks like a vague-looking trough just to the northeast of Lake Huron, but a convincing one just to the northeast of Maine. And there could be a weird-looking ridge, a small one, north of Maine. Now, what does this mean? It means that there's still going to be a lot of bad weather in the Pacific Northwest. Some wet weather could occur throughout some chances of wet weather in New Mexico to western Texas. But yeah, there could be some leftover winter weather throughout parts of the Northeast and the Eastern Seaboard. But not a strong one, though. Just mostly or at least overcast conditions over there. Hold on a minute, folks. Alright, I'm back. And finally, by Tuesday afternoon, there will be a trough over northern Texas. And it looks like it's all connected, but in Nebraska, there's also a ridge just southwest of Southern California, and another ridge just over the Gulf. There's going to be a ridge just offshore from the Outer Banks. What does this mean? There's going to be some wet weather, maybe some storms in the western side of the Mississippi and the western Gulf, and some bad weather moving into places like the West Coast. And just a chance of unsettled weather to mostly overcast conditions in places like the Central Plains, the Mid-Mississippi Valley, and some parts of the Ohio Valley too. And now, let me just change the region just to see what we're going to see with the Northern Hemisphere. This is right now, and there's a lot of cold air over the Great Lakes, and as well as the Alaskan coast, the Gulf of Alaska, and Siberia. There's a lot of warmth in eastern Russia and western Alaska, and there's plenty of mild weather to go around in the western part of the United States. Tomorrow afternoon, plenty of cold air in Russia, and more cold air in the Gulf of Alaska, and there's a good amount of concentration of cold weather on the eastern seaboard, and yet it's going to bring in all that snow. There's going to be plenty of warmth in the mountainous portions of the west. Monday afternoon, cold air starts slowly moving away from the northeast, but then you end up with some warm weather moving into the central part of the U.S. Cold weather is present in the eastern part of Alaska, like Juneau, and dissipating cold weather in southeastern Russia. Plenty of warmth over the Aleutian Islands. on Tuesday afternoon. Warmth extends further to the east, slightly below average temperatures in South Florida and Maine. Then you get this cold air that's going to move into the Pacific Northwest in a matter of a few days. Then slight warmth in northern Russia. Japan, north of Japan, they'll get some really cold air. But since this is Wednesday afternoon, cold air starts moving into the northwestern part of the country. There's still plenty of warm conditions all over the United States, but some parts of the Great Lakes, cold air starts moving in. Siberia is going to be filled with so much cold air by that time. Thursday afternoon, cold air advances, digs into the north central part of the U.S. and still in the Pacific Northwest. Warm air dominates throughout the eastern seaboard and the southern half of the country. Friday afternoon, now that cold air penetrates into the northeast, and still more cold air moves into the Pacific Northwest, but still plenty of warm conditions throughout much of the southern half of the country. Still some cold air in Siberia. And finally, next Saturday afternoon. Oh, now, hold on a minute. Now you guys are seeing that warm air would dominate throughout the eastern coastline. Look at that. Just a few days prior, it's all cold, but then all that warmth starts building up on the eastern side. Then you still get some cold air in the northern tier of the country, but just west of the Great Lakes, though. Okay, so now let's take a look at the drought. And from what it looks like, there's still an extreme drought in the southern tip of Maine, northern Florida, and southern Georgia, southern Texas. Pockets of extreme drought throughout the entire continental divide. And north of the Ohio River, some extreme drought still there. California is mostly drought-free, as well as North Dakota, Connecticut, and we do have drought-free states like Kentucky and Rhode Island. All right. And let's not forget to mention Tennessee, like almost drought-free. Now, let's go here. We're going to talk about temperature for tonight. By tonight, freezing air would dominate throughout places like much of the Northeast, to the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, much of the Great Plains, eastern side of the Rockies. Sub-zero temperatures would dominate throughout the upper Mississippi and the Dakotas. There's going to be plenty of mild temperatures on the west coast, warmth in southern Arizona, southern Texas, and much of Florida. By tomorrow morning, sub-zero temperatures move into the middle Mississippi region, plus Chicago, Milwaukee, of course Minneapolis will always get that, Des Moines. Freezing temperatures still dominate throughout the Northeast, parts of the Mid-Atlantic, and now entering into the interior parts of the South, like Tennessee, Arkansas, and Oklahoma, and much of the Great Basin and the Rockies. Mild temperatures still lingering throughout the West Coast and the Gulf Coast and coastal Southeast as well. By tomorrow night, freezing air all over the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states, the Ohio Valley, interior South, and the eastern Great Plains. Sub-zero temperatures in the upper Mississippi Valley and parts of the Ohio Valley too, and even the Adirondacks and northern parts of interior New England. Mild temperatures all over the West Coast, very warm in southern Arizona and South Florida. We have plenty of freezing temperatures all across the eastern seaboard, with the exception of Florida Peninsula. In most of the Mississippi will have freezing air. Eastern plains, much of the Rockies and parts of the Great Basin, and Sierra Nevadas too. There's going to be plenty of warmth in South Florida. Mild temperatures throughout much of the West Coast and southern Arizona too. Let me stretch. Monday night, freezing air would dominate throughout the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, parts of much of the Carolinas, the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, and Upper Mississippi Valley, and even parts of the Rockies, a few places in the Great Basin. Plenty of warmth in southern Arizona, southeastern California. Mild temperatures throughout the West Coast and southern Florida. Finally, by Tuesday morning, all that freezing air will be all over throughout much of the I-95 corridor, anywhere north of Jacksonville, Florida. But it'll cover the panhandle of Florida and the eastern Gulf, the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, a few parts of the Great Plains, the Rockies, parts of the Great Basin too, and the Cascades, Bitterroot Mountains too. Mild temperatures will be all over the West Coast, Texas, much of Texas, and mild conditions in South Florida. Now let me go back to tonight, where we're going to talk about humidity. There's going to be plenty of humidity throughout much of the Gulf, from Texas all the way to West Virginia, and the interior parts of the Northeast and New England. Plenty of moisture on the leeward side of the Cascades, plenty of dry weather in much of the desert Southwest, western Texas, and as well as the interior parts of Southern California. For tomorrow morning, plenty of moisture all over the Gulf. That includes Florida and much of the East Coast. Dry weather all over some parts of the interior West. Plenty of moisture over the Central Valley of California. Both sides of the Cascades, but the Cascades just somewhat drier. By tomorrow night, there will be lots of drought throughout much of the South, much of the interior West. Plenty of moisture throughout much of the Northeast, the Great Lakes, and a lot of moisture in the Pacific Northwest and southern Florida. Hold on a minute, folks. Alright. I don't know if I already mentioned this. Wait, I think I have. But anyway, somewhat humid in South Florida. A lot of moisture in the Pacific Northwest. A narrow corridor of moisture from western Texas all the way to northeastern Nebraska. Plenty of moisture in the Central Valley of California. A little bit in the Northeast and Great Lakes region. Monday night, a lot of dry weather from Virginia to St. Louis, as well as the Front Range of the Rockies, and as well as the desert Southwest. Plenty of moisture throughout the coastal part of the Pacific Northwest, and as well as the Great Lakes region, upper Mississippi, northern plains, parts of the Northeast. I don't know why I say that, but there's some dry weather in much of eastern Texas. And finally,